Can I ask you what you remember from segregation?
Well, when I was little, it was a big deal. Uh, I was born in the 50s. I was 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the early 60s, John F. Kennedy got to be president. And it was just, I remember the black people, there would be two signs for restrooms. The whites had a restroom and then the blacks had a restroom. They could not ride in the front of a bus. Of course, we didn't have buses in Kennedy like that, but in big cities, they had special areas they could only enter the doors at or go to the bathroom, or maybe in a restaurant. A lot of restaurants wouldn't let them come in and wouldn't feed them. So there were black restaurants and white restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And in Columbus, there was a black restaurants and white restaurants, and their restaurants were on one street or two streets because that's where the majority of the black people lived. And white people didn't go to black restaurants, but now they do. There's, anybody can go to any restaurant, but I'm not sure about voting. But we had a black lady. Her name was Dorothy, and we called her Dot. She was like a member of our family. She started working for my mother when my brother was about a year old, and she worked for her full time for many years. And then in the late 60s, she decided that she was going to go up north because a lot of the blacks thought they would be treated better up north by northerners. There were more opportunities. She stayed up there like 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
She came back. She didn't like it. We asked her why did she come back so quick, and she said because the people weren't nice to her. In big cities, you don't know everybody and you just go on by them. You don't give them attention. But down here, everybody knows everyone else. The blacks know all the whites.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's nice to each other. So she moved back down here. She got a job at a plant and worked there, and then worked for my mother and daddy part-time. She would come and cook. My mother was a school teacher, so Dot would come cook supper for us. When Mother came home from school, she had maybe papers to grade and stuff like that. So my daddy would go pick up Dot, and she would come and fix supper for us. And for a long time when I was little, I noticed she would put out the food, serve us, and when we got up, she would take the dishes all up and put them in the sink. And then she would get her a plate, and she would come over here and eat at the table. I was 10 when we moved in this house. She would come over and eat. Well, later I noticed as we all got older, and I was so glad, but she would sit down and eat with us. So, I just thought that was sweet that she wanted to eat with us like she was a member of the family. And she was.
That's nice.
Are you about to cry?
But Dot lived to be very old. Let's see, she died like 2 years ago. Yeah. And she would come to me, and when I moved back up here in this house that she had worked at, she had retired from her job. She worked at a plant making, I think they made clothes. And when she retired from that plant, she came and asked my mother and daddy, they were still alive, if they would needed some help. And they were getting older, and they really did need help. So she started coming down here like 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. She would fix lunch for them. And she would do anything else, they wanted to do. And a lot of times she would just go out and wash the windows. You didn't even have to ask her. She just wanted to do that, for them because they were really close. So when my parents died, she kept working for me 2 days a week. And I really thought I didn't need her, but I gave her a little job because I just wanted to see her and visit with her. So we did, and finally she just got to where her health was so bad she couldn't really do much, you know. But I still let her come because we were just friends, you know. We would visit. That probably stopped about 4 or 5 years ago. So she was in our life a long time, and finally she died. She had some health problems, but she was a sweet lady. Um, I interviewed her one time and did a story for her for the newspaper, and I wanted to ask her a lot of questions about, uh, you know, integration and segregation. But I was just hesitant to ask her about things. I didn't know how to put it, you know, and what if she wanted to talk about it. So I didn't really ask too much about that. But she told me about her life and about her parents, and it was a really good article.
That sounds very good.
Yeah, yeah. And she was a fun lady. So she had a lot of friends. All the blacks I know were very sweet and very nice. A lot of them would do yard work for my mother and daddy. And you could always count on them, you know, coming and doing yard work. And anybody around here would do anything for you, black or white. So.
Okay, I have a question. So they had a black school and a white school
Yes,
here in
I was going to
Kennedy.
mention that.
I want to know who taught at the black school. Was it just black women?
Yes, it was. And when segregation came around, well, the teachers got to teach. The white schools had a couple of teachers, you know, that were black. I was already out of school by then. That was in the 60s, middle 60s to late 60s. Schools weren't segregated until about I would say 67 or 68. And they all joined and came to our school. Now, we had a black school in Kennedy. It was in the black neighborhood up on the hill. And it was there for a long time. And Dot told me about going to that school, and she told me some things about that. They had one outhouse behind it. I'm thinking she told me when she got older, like a teenager, she helped teach some of the children. That was really smart. But that school is torn down now. It's not up there, but I've got a picture of it.
So were black students encouraged to go through 12th grade, or were they only allowed to go through 6th grade, 8th grade?
In their school. Okay, that's a good question. When they had a black school all their own, I think it was maybe through 8th or 9th grade. And then there was a school in Vernon, which was the county seat, that had a bigger school. It was the Todd High School. It was for black people, and they went there. And then, of course, when segregation came, they entered the mainstream, the white people's school. But I don't know if that school still stayed open. They still celebrate. They have a program every year, and they give scholarships out to black children.
But realistically, a lot of the kids that were in Kennedy that made it through 7th grade probably couldn't afford to travel to FET or get transportation to finish their high school degree.
I'm not sure if they had a bus or not.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I was, you know, my daddy was on the Board of Education, so he would have known. And that Board of Education, I'm not sure if it was over the black school or if they had their own. But now everything's one. Everything's like equal.
Do you ever remember going to town in Columbus and seeing like black restrooms and white restrooms and black like water fountains and white water fountains?
The water fountains, I've seen them in places, but I don't remember the restrooms. I just didn't pay a lot of attention, and I was young. I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. You know, I didn't pay much attention to it. There was a lot of people were poor and didn't have good circumstances, and we had people in our school, white people, you know, that they never lived in a house very long, and the kids just always came to school, and some of them didn't look real clean, some of them even smelled, you know.
Yeah.
That was just a way of life for them, and I felt sorry for them, but I was always very nice to them. And now they've done really well now, because I know some of them were in my class.
So when you were a little girl, were you allowed to listen to, like, say, black music and watch movies with black
Okay.
actors?
I listened to WVOK on the radio. They were unusual because they played every kind of music all on one station. You would hear rock and roll, you would hear Elvis, you would hear Little Richard, you would hear, Little Richard was black.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a popular song, they played all the popular music. And, but something that I found out later was the blacks often had the record first, and if it did well, a white person would come along and record it, and that was, but there were blacks that were really famous, and but I don't know about that. It was just, I found out later sometimes there were two versions of all popular records, but some of them just were too big even for that. They were like, their record, like Little Richard and Fats Domino, they were really popular. Sam Cooke, I had his albums, his records. It didn't matter when it came to music.
It was the same thing for me in the 80s. I loved Michael Jackson.
Yeah, you did.
I watched a lot of black TV shows in the 80s, like the Jeffersons, the Cosbys.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions for Mama about the topic that you can think of?
Papa has something to say about it. Do you want me to tell you this story?
Yeah.
It would be probably better if he told it, but he has told the story to you, I think, about they lived out in the country on a long country road, and there was like cotton fields and fields across the road, and he was walking up the road one day, and he saw a black person in the field. I think he was working, and he says that's the first black he'd ever seen. I don't know how old he was. I don't know if he was 5, 6, 7, 8, but that was the first black he had ever seen. So he got scared and he ran all the way to his house. Do you remember the story, Judy?
I think I've heard him
You need
tell
to
that
ask
story.
Daddy. Yeah, and they they told him that was a black person. That was it was okay. That it was nothing to be afraid of. He just never had seen one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's weird, but.
He'll probably have some more stories to tell you about segregation in school. He was 3 years older than Mama, and I think he remembers when that happened exactly. Do you remember when was it George Wallace blocked the college for black students going there?
Yeah,
Do you remember that in the news?
Yes. In fact, I recently came up on a story. I was clipping some newspapers I found in the storage room this week. And one of them was an anniversary of that day, and Peyton Bobo wrote a story about George Wallace. And when I read that story, it seemed sad because George Wallace said a lot of bad things about him. That was just a belief, white people just thought, well, they're different from us, they won't fit in here at the University of Alabama school. They need to go somewhere else, to maybe a lesser school. They can't keep up. And apparently George Wallace said that. And George Wallace was governor of Alabama at that time. And then Peyton went on to say that in later years, George Wallace took all that back. He said he was sorry for saying it, that he shouldn't have said it. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that sounds interesting. I had a question, but I forgot about it.
Maybe you'll think of it.
Yeah. Every time I go here, I feel like it's a time machine. Like,
Here,
yes,
in the house or just into Kennedy.
into Kennedy too. Like,
Yeah, it's an old town. Yeah.
It makes me think like of all the stuff that happened in the past years. And
Yeah, a lot happened. Yeah, it's a little town, but we used to be a busy town. People would be down there shopping and all, It's not like that now. People move off. When young people get through school now, there's nothing in Kennedy for them to do. so they want to go to Columbus or Tuscaloosa or maybe to Florida or up to Tennessee or up to Huntsville.
Yeah.
You know, because there's more to do, and you can't blame them for wanting more things to do. But a lot of people come back here.
Yeah, it feels old, but in a good way.
Well, good.
Yeah. Like, I always enjoy coming here.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm glad you do.
Yeah, it's very nice here. It's very quiet.
Yeah.
And that school's, you said that's the first article you wrote?
Mm-hmm.
What's
The old
Alabama
school.
is that?
I did an very old black lady that was like 104, and then I did James Wilson's knife collection that Granddaddy got him started on. 3 stories, because one Saturday I went out with my camera. I was new at the Gazette. She told me just to go out and get something for the paper, and this is the first one I got.
What? How is this possible? That makes no sense. Mom? What is going on?